What I wanted to do today, I actually had a message prepared for today. And that message that I had prepared for today is a really, really, really good message. Like, I believe it is. But I'm not giving it today. It's called God's, we're going to put it on the screen, God's Earth. Everybody say it with me, God's Earth. And I'm going to be preaching on that next Sunday, okay? Because what we're doing today is really important. What I'm going to talk to you about right now is really important. And so it's kind of like doing a grand opening in two parts, okay? Maybe not all the, party stuff next week, but the message is still extremely important and one that you need to hear. So just look at somebody and tell them, you're coming next week. You've been told. Now obey. That's all there is to it. And I want to just talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. And let me start from a very long time ago. When I was 3 years old, that is a little while ago, I was taken, I didn't have a choice, by my parents, along with the other brothers, down to South America where my parents were missionaries. And they were missionaries for 3 years in Colombia and then Argentina. And it was a great time, incredible time. I have very good memories from there. And man, I'm looking at Diego right here from Argentina. I want some like entraña right now. It'd be good, so good. And anyway, so we came back when I was 6 years old to LA. And we were here, and eventually my dad was called to be a pastor of a church up in Northern California. We went up there, and then at 15 years old, we returned back to LA when my dad received the opportunity to work in our denomination of churches and to lead some different things. And during that season, it was a good season, and good things happened. My dad ended his time in one of the roles that he had at the end of 1998. And in December of 1998, he was all of a sudden without a job. Anybody gone through that before? And he had no work, literally no work. And here's a guy that had been in ministry his whole life, a man who actually before ministry had started businesses, is a genius in terms of doing all of that type of stuff, but all of a sudden finds himself out of work. And I remember, I was 19 years old at the time, I remember he would sit in the backyard patio almost every day, and he would be thinking, praying, and just spending time with God. And I don't know the conversations he had with my mom, who's right here. I have no idea. They haven't told me. I don't know if he was stressed or not. I imagine so a little bit. But I remember at 19 years old looking at him and seeing him in that season that lasted about 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there, how filled with peace he was. That impacted me. I was like, what are we going to do? He's like, it's okay. And I was a swimmer at Cal State Northridge at the time, and swimming took up a lot of time. And so I actually remember I went to my coach. It was I think it was my second year, my sophomore year of college. And I went to the coach and I told him, listen, next year I'm not going to be able to swim anymore. I need to work and earn more money and support my family because we're in a hard time. And my parents had been very, very supportive of me up until then, living at home, eating all their food. It was great. And so I told my coach that I was really worried about what was happening. But my dad was just so peaceful. And eventually, he was called on to start a brand new church in Spanish, called La Iglesia en el Camino in Van Nuys, which is still going to this day. And I remember because a little bit before that, God had told me to learn Spanish. I was walking to a class. And God said, Jeff, I took you to the mission field for a reason, exact words, learn Spanish. And I was like, okay. I hadn't learned Spanish when we were on the mission field when I was younger. And so at 19 years old, I started dating my wife, and her family's Guatemalan, and I started eating a bunch of Guatemalan food, and Spanish just started coming out of me. It was amazing. It was like tamal and then Spanish words. I mean, it was incredible. The more you eat, the more you speak it. I don't know what's going on. And so I started learning Spanish with their family and my wife's parents' church. And then my dad received this opportunity to start this Spanish church. And I remember the second Sunday, it started in August of 1999. And the second Sunday, I was there. I was there because I knew God wanted me to be there with him. I walked in. I had no position. I had no title. I wasn't a pastor. I was a college student that loved Jesus, wanted to do ministry. And I walked in and I just started attending services like many people do. And eventually, I asked the worship team if I could start practicing with them, and they were like, okay, we'll let you practice. And eventually, I started playing the grand piano during the worship services, which is part of the reason why I wanted to keep the grand piano that the previous people had here, right behind us, because I love piano. It's amazing. And so I was on the worship team, and then eventually we started a youth ministry. And God was just answering miraculously. Things were going on. The church grew exponentially. Eventually grew to be 8,000 people every Sunday. And it was an incredible season. God was up to incredible things. And there's a whole lot of people here that know exactly what I'm talking about. There's people in this room that were a part of it or knew about it. And there's other people here that are like, I wasn't a part of that history, and you're newer, and God bless you. I mean, we're glad to be together. And in that season, God spoke to my wife and I and made clear that he was calling us to plant a church. And so we did. So in 2011, my wife and I left our family, parents, and the church and went off and planted City Life in North Hollywood. And we started that 10 years ago. Actually, this July of 2021 marks 10 years since we planted that church. 2 years later, in 2013, my dad had to leave from Van Nuys and started a brand new church that everybody here knows the name of, El Camino Metro. And started this church and has been doing it ever since. In 2018, my dad left the congregation that was then meeting at Pauley High School, and that got a different name. And then my dad restarted El Camino Metro around the corner at Heritage, as so many of us know. And in this season, it's so crazy because God is doing all these different things, and God had spoken to my wife and I through a prophetic word of somebody that didn't even know us at the time. And God used this man to speak to us about planting. And he actually, and I didn't say this in any of the other services, but my wife will remember this. There was something that he said in that word 11 years ago. That he said that even though we were going off and starting something new, we would still be connected. And I wasn't sure what that meant and what that would look like or how that would be or work out or whatever in the future. God knows. And so we came to this new year, and it was interesting because in 2016, Pastor Eric right here started a church as well called Camino de Salvación, which is Way of Salvation. And we came into this new year, and we felt like God was showing us, separately, like I was surprised to see you there, and God was showing us that we needed to start meeting together. So in February, when Metro started the services, then we brought the City Life family over, and then and Eric was there too with his church family, and it was like, what is God doing? And I'm going, I have no idea, but I trust God. And then people would ask me, so what's the plan? I'm like, I don't have one. But I'm trusting Jesus. And in this entire season, in this entire process, it literally has been doing exactly that. We're just going to go step by step, trusting God and what he is telling us to do. And people that know me think it's crazy when they hear me say I don't have a plan, because they're like, you always have a plan. Not this time. We're just following the Holy Spirit. And in this season, we started meeting together and asking the Lord, what in the world are you doing? And what are we supposed to do? And then all of a sudden, something my dad and I had been working on, this property becomes available, and we actually get selected our offer is accepted, right? And we're going, what in the world? And then all of a sudden, a few months later, this property is now ours. And you go, oh my gosh, God, what are you doing? I mean, in the middle of COVID, we're buying a church property. And let me just be absolutely clear. I've probably said this before. I'm going to say it again. And sorry if I bore you to death. But let me just be clear. There is no church property of this size that you can get in the valley. It doesn't exist. And there are properties that are, let me tell you, one quarter of the size of this property that cost more money than what we paid for this. God is faithful. God is faithful. I got to tell you, there was a cat walking by us last night. We were here. You go, why are you talking about cats? I'm like, see, if our property was pure concrete everywhere, no cat would find a home here. But we got this amazing forest garden property that is so beautiful, right? And so we continued on asking the Lord and trusting the Lord for what he wants us to do. There is something that has been a part of the identity of my dad's ministry, at least as far back as 22 years ago in 1999 when he started that first Spanish church. And has been a part of my life as a result of that. It's kind of a spiritual DNA. And it's a simple word. It's actually shown in John chapter 10, verse 10, where Jesus says this. He says, the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying, what word is right there? Life. That is the purpose of Jesus. His purpose is life. And that word has been a part of our ministry for 20 plus years. That identity, that commitment, that call from God has been who God has called us to be. And I think about it because according to John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus says this, I am, what does he say right here? I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And actually, this phrase is really interesting because Jesus obviously is the way, and Jesus is the truth, and Jesus is the life. But there's a progression to this. It's interesting the order he placed it in. Because if you're going to get to a destination, you got to first figure out the what? The way to get there. And so Jesus says, well, I'm the way. And so we begin walking in the way, walking in Jesus, walking with Jesus. But as we're walking along, we need to make sure that as we walk, we don't stumble and fall, that we don't get distracted, that we don't deviate from the path. And that is why Jesus is also what? The truth. His word is our guide to keep us on the way as we go along. But the ultimate goal that Jesus is taking us to, as he gets us on his way and fills us with his truth, is to ultimately lead us to his life. That's the ultimate goal. In fact, truth is not the goal. Truth is important. Don't hear me say it's not important. It's absolutely essential and important. But truth serves the purpose of leading us into the fullness of the life of Jesus Christ. And this is what Jesus desires for us, his life. To fill us to overflowing with his life. And I could preach over and over again, multiple weeks, all the verses where Jesus talks about life. It's so much. And we preached on this a few months ago, actually. And so, as we were coming into this season, a couple months ago, a few of us got together and were meeting with my dad, and we were talking about what will this next season be like? Well, what is it that we're going to do? Well, we're bringing multiple congregations together, and we're trying to figure out what this thing is, and I mean, does it have a different name? And what do we do with this thing? Well, what's the identity that God is going to give us? How many people here like buying clothes, new clothes? Anybody? Anybody? There's like 10 hands raised, which means a whole bunch of you are liars. All right. And you know what it means to put on something new and different and to look different, to kind of have a different external identity, right? Now, that doesn't change the core of who you are. Your values are still the same. Who God has called you to be is the same, but you might have a different identity on the outside. You know, some of you have like every 5 years, you rotate to a new haircut, a new hairstyle, right? I do that about every 5 years, but I just change like one little thing. It's like little small changes, you know? But you know what? There's nothing wrong with honoring and valuing the past, but understanding that God has new identities for new seasons. And this is where God is leading us and what he's calling us to, is not being stuck to an identity of the past, the values of the past, yes, the principles of the past, yes, the truth of the past, yes, the word of God that has led us and guided us, the Spirit of God, yes, 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 all of that, yes, but things get packaged in different ways. And the Lord is leading us into this new season. And so we were sitting in that meeting, and we were talking about all of this, and my dad all of a sudden says, I have an idea. And I was like, okay. And he said, how about this name? And it's crazy because, you know, you would typically think, well, you know, let the younger people figure out the name for the future. And here's my dad going, no, I have a name. And the crazy thing that happened is once he said that name, and let me tell you, I wish he was here today. And I invite all of you to please keep praying for him. His health is okay, but it's been more difficult lately than before. And so please keep praying for him. But once he said that name, all of us around the table in that room immediately went, that's it. There was a confirmation in our spirits that what he was speaking was what needed to be. And you know, I think that's a God thing, because the truth is, even this entire property that we're sitting in today, I believe is due to God's faithfulness to a man that has stood faithfully with God for so many years. And when things have gone through different ways and different seasons and different things, and God says, you have stayed faithful. And Scripture is clear, you do reap that which you sow. And he has sowed faithfully. And he is reaping the benefits of that. And so I don't think it's an accident that God would give him the name and then confirm it with all of us and say, this is the direction that we are moving in the future. And so we have a new identity as we move forward. And God is doing something new with each and every one of us. And to present the name, we are going to watch a little video. There's going to be a countdown at the end of the video, and then it will show the name. So, you know, if you can, I guess, get ready to celebrate. And God is moving us into a new season. Is everybody ready? All right. Let's watch. Are you ready? We want to welcome you to Vida Church. Come on, can we give an applause to God right now? And you know what? I believe, anybody excited today? I believe, and let me be clear on something. As many know, but if you don't, vida is the Spanish word for life. And God gave this name. God birthed this for us. But let me be clear. As you receive something from God, you begin to understand what God is doing. And because all of our churches, now coming together into one, have been churches with both English and Spanish. And that is a part of the identity that God has given to us. That is our unique call. A call that has brought together multiple ethnicities, yes, but multiple languages as well. And you know, we don't need to run from that or deny that. No, we need to fully be who God has called us to be. And so to have a name that carries both languages right in the name. And it's easy because it'll be the same for English and Spanish. We're not changing the wording in any language. This is what it is. So for the Spanish speakers, it's church in English. And for us English speakers, it's vida in Spanish. And it's a combination of both and a blessing about who we are as a church. And by the way, a unique name that as a church does not even exist in the city of Los Angeles. So this is something that is absolutely unique to us as a church as we move forward into what God has for us.